Hey, it looks like we're live. So we will go ahead and get started. Good afternoon. I'm Marcy Meistrick with East West Gateway, and I've managed the MetroLink Security Assessment and the Metro Security Strategy projects over the last 2.5 years. The work has been a partnership with Metro and Bi-State, where they requested that we as East West Gateway do a third-party review of their security system and practices. Over the course of the project, we've also worked alongside Metro's partner law enforcement agencies, the business community, local elected leaders, and some of the transit system's biggest stakeholders. It's been challenging, even awkward at times, but the outcomes have been remarkable. 2 years ago at our annual meeting, we were early in the assessment process, and we held a panel discussion with peer transit security professionals from Washington, D.C., Minneapolis, Sacramento, and Portland. As part of the MetroLink Security Assessment project, we invited them to come to St. Louis, take a look at our MetroLink system, and talk about changes that were needed. Using the information they shared, along with industry best practices and a host of other data, we finalized the assessment with 99 recommendations and then used those to guide the development of the Metro Security Strategy. The strategy is a comprehensive, layered, customer-focused security approach for Metro Transit. Today, we want to talk about the impressive progress that has been made since you heard from that peer panel 2 years ago. Many of you have seen multiple presentations over the 2.5-year life of this work, and we're hoping to bring some of what you've seen on paper and screens to life for you today. I'd like to begin by sharing a video recently made by Citizens for Modern Transit. The video gives an overview of the work that's been done over the last 2.5 years and some of the pieces that have been implemented so far. And I'm having some trouble here. Hold on. Sorry about that. This should be top on my list. Is this it, I think, Kim? There we go.
Several years ago, we noted a significant decline in transit ridership on the system in this region. And when we looked at it more closely, we saw that there had been an erosion of public confidence and positive perceptions in the safety of the system following some larger incidents in the area. And at that time, we saw a regional collaboration that we had never seen before. It was unprecedented when the elected officials got together and signed a memorandum of understanding along with Bi-State that laid out a framework or an action plan on how to address transit safety and security.
So the goal is to have mayors, elected officials, so board chairs, also having key stakeholders, so leaders of organizations that we see as actually being able to contribute resources, time, ideas, research to this issue of safety and security in public transit.
We started out with a phase one, which was an assessment, looking at the physical condition of the system, looking at policies, looking at agencies that help secure the system, and coming up with recommendations.
One of the things that was very identifiable was we had a very narrow perspective of what security is. And so these 99 recommendations are guidelines for us to build out a comprehensive public safety dynamic or a holistic public safety structure, which does include field security, so boots on the ground, visibility, but it also includes emergency management, crime prevention through environmental design, the effective use of data and analytics, and so forth and so on.
Those recommendations went into a phase two, and that phase two, we developed a plan to help Bi-State and others in the region implement those recommendations.
We've built a 3-tiered layer security approach, which constitutes very visible by contract security on the system itself, by our own transit security specialists, our internal employees, but also better collaboration and deployments with law enforcement as well.
What you'll see on the system right now is all different uniforms. So the same neighborhoods and the same municipalities are all working together in a cohesive group to deliver what the public has been asking for, a cohesive group working on the neighborhood of transit. We have that today. We're still progressing, but I'm very proud of that.
What really makes the most impactful security headway is our contract security and our transit security specialists engaging our customers on a daily basis. There's somebody there when you get on the system that you can identify with the company, okay? There's somebody there that is watching to mitigate nuisance behavior. There's somebody there to enforce our new code of conduct.
I have been on the train and have seen 2 or more security officers get on, check fares. That is a big component to me of safety and security on the system.
I've been able to be witness to those changes that we've made that have positively impacted the safety and security of the system. However, our community, getting that information to the community, that's where we've faltered so far. And so bringing our community leaders and stakeholders together gives us the opportunity to not only share what we've done so far, but also to solicit their ideas and their feedback on what we can do to further improve and enhance safety and security.
One of the things that I think really will make a significant impact on our product long term is the increase in ridership. The more people that ride the system, the safer that you feel. But we have to re-earn that trust. We have to show that we're making these efforts to put a product out there where people are not reluctant to get on. And I hope that we're doing that. I hope that we've done some of that over the past year. But we need that ridership to increase. We need to think about using the transit, people in this area to think about using the transit system.
We still need visibility of officers and security on the system. We need fair enforcement to be one of the layers of that security plan. And we really need to engage the riders on the system as to what is important to them and making sure that it is a safe and secure system. So as we move forward, safety and security is going to continue to be a top priority for citizens for modern transit, for transit riders, whether you're a daily commuter or you only occasionally use the system. And we hope that other stakeholders and organizations in the community join us in this effort, because it really is important that our transit system be a success in this region.
All right. Well, I think that video really does a good job of showing a lot of the progress that has been made so far. And one other thing that I want to talk about briefly before I introduce our other speakers is what we call the Metro Security Scorecard. And the scorecard was developed as part of the Metro Security Strategy as a third-party review process to show the progress that was being made across all 99 of those recommendations that were made during the security assessment. So what you see on your screen is one of the, I think this was the second issue that was put out. So the 99 recommendations fall under 6 categories, and those you can see are security strategy, police and security staffing, fair and fair enforcement, things like that. And within each of those are a number of recommendations. And what we do each quarter, East West Gateway and WSP sit down with Metro Security staff, and we have a giant spreadsheet that is filled with what we have defined as the metrics that will show progress to move to fill in these circles, so that we can show that there is either still work to be done on the recommendations or they're completed. Some of them are completed and some are not, but just know that we're not, these circles don't get filled in easily. Kevin has to work for that, and they have to show the objective data that that is behind each of the recommendations moving forward. And I just wanted to throw this up here to show you. So we started doing these in September of 2019. Pictured in the top left corner is the first scorecard that we published. And in the bottom right corner is the most recent one. So it is the 5th one. So in the span of a year, you can see there's been a whole lot of progress. And this just really demonstrates how hard Kevin and his team have been working to implement the security strategy that we've developed.
Hey, Marcy,
yes.
Marcy, if I can interject here, we're not able to see it. And this is an important point, and I would hate to pass over this. So all we're seeing is the final frame of the video.
Oh, okay. Well, let me stop and restart. I'm sorry about that. I should never have tried to do the trick a new way because it didn't work. So now can you see it?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So as I said, the top left corner shows the first scorecard that was published, and the bottom right shows the most recent one. So really just putting this up here so that you can see the amount of progress that's been made to date. And I'll go ahead and jump back since you didn't see the first one either. Just to show you the detail inside of this. So what you were seeing is what's shown here on the left, just over the 6 broad categories. But the picture on the right kind of shows each individual recommendation within those categories and how we walk through and look at the objective evidence and whether or not it exists before we award progress in that area. So sorry that wasn't working at first. That's all I'm going to share on my screen. Now I just want to introduce our panelists. Well, before I do that, let me just note that not every single one of those items in the scorecard are within Metro's control or within the control of the Joint Task Force. So, you know, some of them, and we make note of this, are kind of outside of their control, and we don't want to dock them for not making progress in things that they can't control. And in addition to that, some of them require quite a bit of money to move forward, some of the major infrastructure and technology components. And so progress on those is a little slower, and that's exactly what we would expect. But I can tell you with 100% assurance that a year and a half ago, we didn't think we would have made it this far by now. And you know, it's thanks to Kevin and his team and the Joint Task Force and everyone who has been working very, very hard over the last year and a half to get this implemented. So with that, I want to introduce our speakers for today and just let each of them tell their own story. So just as WSP was wrapping up much of their work on the Metro Security Strategy last fall, new leadership was brought in to Metro Public Safety to usher in the changing direction. Kevin Scott is with us today, and he is the General Manager of Field Security at Metro Public Safety. Kevin's been in that position now for about 16 months. He is the former police chief of Baldwin, Missouri, and he's going to be talking with you about the improvements that have been made to make Metro riders feel safer. I'm going to go ahead and introduce all 3 speakers, and then I'll hand it over to Kevin. I think Kevin will probably be calling on Captain Melissa Webb, who is with the St. Louis County Police Department, and she's been with them for 25 years. She just recently moved into the MetroLink detail, and she brings with her a progressive, community-focused philosophy and has been working with Kevin and his staff to team the police officers that she oversees with security staff so that you see, as a rider, a seamless security front. We want to give Melissa an opportunity to just tell you a little bit about herself because she's new in this position, and just let you hear how she plans to continue building the relationships between her officers, the entire security team, and the riders they serve. And then after Kevin and Missy talk to you a little bit about what's happening out in the field, we're going to talk to Kim Sella, who's the Executive Director of Citizens for Modern Transit. Kim has been advocating for a safe and reliable transit system the entire time I've known her, which has been about 25 years. Um, and her leadership in the community with the Transit Advisory Working Group has just been instrumental in making way for the changes that have been taking place over the last year and a half. So Kim's going to share some of her early experiences with calling for these improvements and some of her more recent observations about how the new approach is working. I know Kim will agree with me wholeheartedly when I tell you that the difference is absolutely remarkable. So with that, Kevin, go ahead and take it away.
Great. Thank you very much, Marcy. And thanks for having us today and allowing us to participate. There have been a number of things that have taken place over the last year or so. One of the attractive things about this position, when I left my police chief's job to accept this position here with Bi-State, was we have an unbelievable regional asset that has been degraded to some extent as far as perception goes and with the whole safety and security question. So this was an opportunity to really be involved with helping to rebuild and to rebrand something that is very, very important to the overall St. Louis region. If you look at other regions around the country, highly successful, competitive regions, they all have viable, safe, and secure, easy to use mass transit systems that the region buys into, the totality of the region buys into. And that's what we need to put in place here. I've lived in St. Louis for 39 years and have seen the progression of the MetroLink system since it began in the early 90s, and I'm excited to be here. The WSP process, or the vetting of our overall public safety structure here at Metro Transit, really began, as Marcy suggested, in March of 2018. Phase one of that process began by really taking a look at the inner workings and the fiber of what was going on here. And when we talk about a multi-layered approach, those layers were really in place back in 2018, but nothing was working. There was no communication between the layers. The contract security layer of MetroLink was completely misguided and misdeployed. Our internal staffing at Metro were doing things to skew the overall roles and responsibilities of an effective security structure by attempting to build its own police component. And that degraded the relationship with the overall law enforcement partnership. Now, I'll start out by telling you that we operate under a federal compact here at Bi-State that allows us to exist. And the federal compact is very clear about things that we can and we can't do in our operation of Metro Transit. And having our own police agency is one of those. And so our relationship with our police partners as part of that overall security structure is hugely important. It offers us the ability to apply effective law enforcement that we really can't apply on our own. So as they went through phase one, there were 99 specific things in 6 very broad categories that they recognized that needed to be addressed. As Marcy said, there are some of those that are outside of the Metro Transit or Bi-State control. However, most of it is within our control, okay? And that's why we're here. We're here to implement that plan. We came in September of 19. Our president and CEO came in actually in January of 19. And he really came in, Toby Roach came in with this perspective of, it's about security, security, security on the MetroLink system. We have to impact this. We have to make it better. We not only have to make people feel safer on the MetroLink system as they ride, but we want them to have a pleasant experience. And so as we came in September of that year, he put us in a position to really get these things done. He cleared a pathway for us. He provided us with the tools that we needed, and with his confidence that we were going to implement these things, and we were going to implement a very clear and sound and professional security structure. I know typically he would be on this call. He's not with us today, but he does receive or should receive a lot of the accolades for some of the accomplishments that we're going to talk about today, because he put this team in place. He said security was his priority, and he put it on the table, and he stuck to it, and he's allowed us to do these things. And so as we progressed through phase 2 of the WSP process, which began in March of 19 and concluded just a few months ago, there was a long-term security strategy that was produced. And what's impressive about this strategy, and I'd like to share it with you, if I can do that. Can everybody see that? Can you guys, the panelists, at least see that on the screen? As you scroll to the end of the strategy, and it's a very comprehensive document, but it really does outline how we are structured, what our philosophies are going forward. It talks about the roles and responsibilities and our long-term vision of what we are building to make the MetroLink system and the entire Metro transit system, for that respect, safe and viable for years to come. But what's impressive about this process that we went through with WSP is when we got to the end of this agreement, everybody agreed to it. So on the first page of approvals, you will see the Safety and Security Committee, which was made up of myself and my colleague Steve Berry, but all 3 police leaders or commanders within the MetroLink structure, the MetroLink police structure, in addition to the assessment team that was here from WSP. And then if you move to the next page of approvals, you'll see former Chief John Belmar, St. Louis City Police Commissioner John Hayden, and the St. Clair County Sheriff Rick Watson, all provided and attested to they supported this process going forward. And then lastly, our President and CEO, Talby Roach, along with Mr. Mark Kern, obviously Mayor Cruson, and Dr. Sam Page from St. Louis County. So this is a regional strategy that has been endorsed by our police and our political leadership. And what's important about this is we talk about how we progress forward in St. Louis and what we're going to do to make this region better and how we're going to compete on a national level. This is a microcosm of regionalization. And some of the things that we're doing here, a lot of the things that we're doing here could be built out on a larger structure. When you talk about cooperation between law enforcement, the marrying of data and analytics, how we work together, how we support each other, how we share information, all that is extremely important and is what is really needed in the entire region to complement what we're doing here. I want to go back, if I can, and I don't think I'll be able to get back to it at this juncture, but the scorecard that Marcy put up during her presentation is very important, and it should not be dismissed. On that scorecard, again, depicts the 6 primary categories that we're focused on, not just from a field security level, but our emergency management structure, our use of environmental design to complement our overall crime and safety platform, our training platform, our emergency management platform. None of these things existed before this process took place. The approach to public safety on Metro Transit prior to this WSP assessment and the build out of this plan was haphazardly approached at best. And it did not work. There was no collaboration. And so what we're focused on is the build out of a fluid, holistic, comprehensive approach to public safety, to safety and security on the Metro Transit system. Not only safety and security that applies to MetroLink, although that's the focus, but taking those same principles and transferring them over to the Metro bus side as well. Now, the structure that we've built or that we've revitalized is built on a 3-tiered process. And I mentioned that those components were already in place prior to us getting here. But if you think about field security and visibility on our system, that's the one thing that we heard when we wrote in here in September of 19 was, hey, we never see security on the system. There's no customer engagement on the system. Now, I'll tell you, although I was a police officer for 28 years and a police chief for 4, I have a very profound customer-based policing or community-based policing ideology. And what we do on the Metro Transit side with our contract security, with our new firm, G4S, which is the most visible component of security on the MetroLink system, is customer engagement, is code of conduct enforcement, and is nuisance behavior mitigation. Our contract security, the brunt of our visible security on the system, becomes the eyes and ears and the customer engagement aspect of our security structure. And then in the middle of a 3-tiered structure, we reinvented the Metro Public Safety Officer Program. As I mentioned earlier, there was a process in place to build a Metro Transit Police Agency, which was counter to our federal agreement, our federal compact. The legalities, the foundation to do that are not in existence, and it doesn't need to be done. So what we have done is we have transitioned that middle layer, that corporate representation within the security structure, into a Metro Transit Security Specialist function, meaning within our deployments along our system, which are zone deployments built out in a customer-based or community-based approach. They become the corporate representation within those zones, collaborating with our contract security on one side and our law enforcement partnerships on the other side to really provide that Metro Transit oversight of the layers of security within those zones themselves. And then finally, all of this is complemented by our law enforcement partners. When you talk about overall security in a very clear and decisive and strong public safety structure, policing is only one small component of an overall security structure. But it's very important because at times we have to have that law enforcement support when we deal with certain situations that all transit systems deal with across the country, things that just aren't unique to St. Louis. But what was missing was that true collaborative and that relationship between what we're supposed to be doing here at Metro Transit and how we can support and complement our law enforcement. And because we can't have our own police agency, the MetroLink Police Task Force was established. And the organizations that participate in that are from 3 major political subdivisions that our alignment runs through: St. Louis County, St. Louis City, and St. Clair County. And what's important here is we have 46 miles. When you think about the MetroLink, we have 46 miles of track, of product. It cannot be treated like 3 separate systems. It has to be one fluid system. It was being treated like 3 separate systems, at least from a security and policing standpoint. That can no longer happen. When we talk about success of our overall region and success of this very profound asset within our region, there has to be a multi-jurisdictional collaboration where we mesh into one fluid team, where there's no artificial lines of separation. And in my position with Metro Transit, in leading this from the company's perspective, that's what I'm trying to push every day. One collective security team, whether it's on the safety and security side of public safety, or it's on the field security side of public safety, the public facing component of that. All this is extremely important. We will not be successful if we treat one fluid system as 3 distinct separate systems. And so that's really what the build out is. And in our police leadership, we have Captain Melissa Webb from St. Louis County. She is the captain and the leader of the police task force. Lieutenant Tom Peters from the St. Clair County Sheriff's Department, and Lieutenant Joe Cruz from the St. Louis City Police Department. All three of those colleagues formed the leadership of that task force. And the way they intertwine within the task force and our relationship with them is hugely important. Did you guys know that before we got here, there was no clear data or metrics about the crime level on MetroLink? There was no systematic approach to the sharing of this information. That was part of the 99 recommendations. That was one of the major focuses of WSP. All that has been corrected. If I could share my screen, I would be able to show you that, but I'm not very tech savvy. So what we do is we monitor Part 1 and Part 2 crimes on the MetroLink system or the Metro Transit system itself. And we get that information from our Metro Transit police partners, and we marry that. And so we all have one collective look at what's happening along one collective fluid system. In addition to that, how we deploy our resources, both on the law enforcement side and on the security side, have now all been married on a daily basis. So we construct one master deployment, and we know where those assets are. We can identify through the data and analytics portion of our program where we need extra support, where we need to put our resources, and we collaborate together on a daily basis to build that one collective MetroLink or Metro Transit safety and security approach. A couple of other important things to note is that we are in constant contact with each other. The three task force leaderships and my colleagues here at Metro Transit, as I mentioned, we collaborate on a daily basis to support our primary law enforcement folks. We have built out a secondary or off-duty law enforcement pool, which are eligible law enforcement officers that would be willing to work part-time off duty for us. And we use that pool. They're not all deployed at the same time, certainly, but we use that pool of officers to complement our primary law enforcement deployments or to complement where we need extra security visibility based on what we're seeing with the trends that we're pushing out. So there are all of these dynamic things going on, including the approval of a ride and abide policy by the Bi-State Board of Commissioners back in June of 2020, which allows us to provide administrative exclusions from the system, not for minor issues, certainly, not for fair enforcement issues, but for profound code of conduct or criminal violations where we feel an individual has exercised in a way that they are dangerous to our customer base or our employees. And we have we utilize this tool to remove those people from an administrative perspective from the system. And that supports our law enforcement initiative, and that if they come back on the system, it provides and builds a more profound ability for our law enforcement partners to assist us with criminal prosecution if they won't comply with the exclusion. So I've taken up way more time probably than I should have, but my point is that this is not a simplistic revamp or reconstructive public safety. This has been a very professional approach of the implementation of best practices across the country. We have not done anything haphazardly. The entire process that we've been through has an external vetting, not only by our colleagues at WSP, Citizens for Modern Transit, but a number of the major stakeholders within the St. Louis area that we continue to collaborate with on a daily basis. We can't, as my president and CEO likes to say, we will never be able to stop the rain, but we can provide a much safer and more profound public safety structure that improves the system greatly and provides a profound, very sound, improved structure going forward. So with that, I would like to go ahead and pass the baton here to Captain Webb if there's anything certainly that you would like to interject, but I appreciate the time and look forward to questions. But we are building a comprehensive, holistic approach, which I think will reposition our system on very solid ground for many years to come. And I'm glad to be a part of it. And again, thank you for having me.
Thank you, Kevin. I appreciate that. And it's an honor to be here. I have only been here a very short period of time. It was the end of September that I came in, but very quickly I learned that the team that is here, they're just all very phenomenal professional individuals. So I've learned very fast and I'm learning very quickly, and they have been very helpful through my transition. I want to tell you something about this phenomenal team. While what happened in the past is the prologue, the future is the chapters that we're building currently now. And they've already laid such an amazing foundation for me to come in. So I don't have a whole lot of work to do, to tweak. And, you know, while I think that this particular assignment is challenging for a police commander or a police officer, because, you know, we're not normally used to riding transit systems, bus lines, things of that nature. I actually look at this as my community. And I think that that's imperative because that actually speaks to the volumes of what's already going on here. We have to look at transit. We have to look at MetroLink. We have to look at our bus services. We have to look at all of those integral pieces of our transportation elements within our community as a community, rather than this disjointed, it's St. Louis City here, St. Louis County here, and it's Illinois there. So while I said before, the work has already been done, I get to come in and enjoy the success of the phenomenal foundation that everyone has already worked so very hard to put in place. And I look very forward to moving on that foundation and continuing to build on that formation of a unified, holistic front where we treat everybody within our ridership as our community. So thank you very much for your time. And I look forward to any of the questions that you might have.
Thank you, Melissa. I'm sure we'll have some more questions for you in a bit. Kim, I want to ask you if you would just kind of share a little bit from your point of view about how far this effort has come from where we were when we started it all a little over 2.5 years ago. So if you could just kind of talk about your involvement, how you came into lead the Transit Advisory Working Group, and just talk about how you've seen the relationships change in that 2.5-year time frame. I think you're still muted.
Sorry. Thank you so much. I have IT issues as well every day of my life. So thank you for having me here today. Citizens for Modern Transit, if people aren't familiar, is the regional transit advocacy organization. So we represent more than 22,000 constituents in the St. Louis area. And there's an old marketing adage, you know, we've come a long way. And we most definitely have come a long way on transit safety and security. Over 4 years ago, when this was elevated as a priority for CMT, we were seeing a lot of, let's just say, unsatisfied customers. At that point, we were very concerned about the significant decline in ridership, over 20%. We were hearing from riders themselves about issues that were happening on the system. We were seeing a complete lack of faith and perception of what was happening on the system was not moving in a positive front. We were also seeing no visibility whatsoever. Kevin touched on it, of security on the system. There was no fair enforcement. General rules of the transit system weren't being enforced. And mental health issues weren't being addressed on the system. And all of this culminated in what Kevin showed you, unprecedented regional collaboration with all of those signatures you actually got to see on the screen today. And that laid out that plan for safety and security. But what it also did is it formed the Transit Advisory Working Group. So Kevin and Melissa and their teams are not operating in a vacuum. They're actually working hand in hand with a group of stakeholders that have come out of this Transit Advisory Working Group as a sounding board, but This group is comprised of numerous organizations across the bi-state area, and it really is a diverse cross-section, including organizations such as OBS, Organization for Black Struggle, SEIU Local 1, the ATU representing the drivers and operators of this system, academic institutions that have a large contingent of transit riders in this market, as well as CMT, business organizations, and others who were truly concerned about where transit was going 2 years ago, 4 years ago. And we have come a long way. When we sat around that table initially, I used to say, you know, maybe I should wear my referee shirt and wear a whistle because we had a lot of infighting at the table itself. We did have law enforcement at the table. We had representatives of our local governments, as well as Metro Transit and Metro Security. And it is refreshing now to see what is happening as CMT, as the regional advocacy organization. You know, public transit is a regional asset. And whether you ride it or not, we have to make sure that we have a safe, secure system for all riders, whether they're everyday users or just occasional riders to a game or to an event or a cultural institution. And at the point when we began this, we weren't sure what we were looking at. And again, we have come 180 with where we are with Kevin and his team and Captain Webb and the city and the sheriff's department all working together at one unit. It really is refreshing. And we're also seeing new steps in new directions. We're seeing the St. Clair County Transit District launching a pilot to address mental health issues on the system, which aren't policing issues, but they are on the system and they need to be addressed as well. So from where we started and where we are now, Marcy, it has been a great journey to witness, and it's really exciting and refreshing to see where we're going from here.
Thank you, Kim. For our attendees, if you have any questions you would like the panelists to answer, you can type them either in the chat box or the Q&A. I'm looking at both, so I'll make sure they get those. We do have one so far in the Q&A, so I'll start with that one. Kevin, I think you'll be the person to answer this one. They're asking, what time does the Metro Security team in the yellow uniforms begin each day? Besides checking tickets, transfers, and passes, what are their roles and responsibilities? I've seen some enforce mask wearing, which is critical during the pandemic. Please keep up the good work to keep riders like me feeling safe using public transit.
Great. Well, thank you for the question. So there's a couple of things that are important. So our G4S contract security team and our internal Metro Transit security specialist team have all been placed in high visibility uniforms, and we did that on purpose so that you can seek them out and see them very easily to increase visibility. Our deployment strategy is always based on fluidity and visibility on the system itself. I talked about how our staff is deployed in the zones, and so they have zone responsibility. And there are X number of security team members that operate within each zone. But the focus is through those zones of fluidity and customer engagement and visibility on the light rail vehicles at the transit centers to really focus on certainly the code of conduct. We have a new 15-point code of conduct that actually came out, was kind of reinvented during the WSP process. But we provide that customer engagement portion of the security structure. And some people might say, well, customer engagement, what does that have to do with security? Well, it's got everything to do with security, because you know our facilities, you know our customer base, you know our trends, you know things that are out of ordinary on the system. It's taking personal ownership and having personal buy-in from the employee perspective into the product. If you're an employee here and you don't have personal buy-in, I don't need you. I need you to take ownership and to accept the mission. So that's what they do. Fair enforcement is part of that, obviously. We have fair enforcers in each of the zones, and fair enforcement is a part of the overall security structure as well. In addition to our technology that we've deployed through our CCTV feeds and our crime centers and how we pull this information, it's not just security and visibility on the system, but all of the other ancillary components that act as force multipliers to enhance the broader security structure. So I said all that because I have to tell you that I can't tell you what type of security comes on duty, because that is protected information, that is SSI, security sensitive information, and I cannot disclose that. But everything else, hopefully I've answered.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you, Kevin. I'm going to toss one more at you for now, and I apologize. That's my dog. I need to step away for a second after I ask you this question and get you going. So in the assessment, it became apparent early on that while there were some infrastructure and technology needs on the Metro system, the biggest issues there were personnel and policy type issues. So talk a little bit, and I think this probably has been your biggest challenge, but how difficult has it been to change the entire department's philosophy on how to provide security?
Well, it wasn't just the entire department, it was the broader company, right? And I wouldn't say anything to you that I wouldn't say to anyone else. Very challenging, because things that were going on became the norm. I'm sorry, can you guys hear me okay? There's a lot of things buzzing in here. It became the norm, okay? And when you operate under a misguided structure like we had, quite honestly, with public safety before we got here, it becomes the norm. It becomes what people are used to. So I will tell you that leading up to this assessment, the contract security company that we had on site, they had no oversight. What makes G4S so successful, and we certainly will have things that happen, and we certainly will make mistakes, and we will certainly have to make adjustments. But what I'm excited about with our new G4S team that came in is anybody that sits in my position, the best decisions that you can make are the team members and the leadership that you help put in place. You can't be everywhere and you can't do everything. And so that G4S account here on site and their on-site leadership, that's what makes the difference. That's what we didn't have under the old agreement. That agreement had been in place a long time. People had been here for a very long time. There was a true lack of motivation. There was a true lack of vision, and nobody was stepping outside of the lethargic box. And no changes were being made. While that was going on, Metro Transit internal public safety officer component, they were trying to police build. So they were completely dismissive of what was going on the security side and completely disconnected from law enforcement. And they were out doing their own thing that was counter to what legally they could do. All right. And then that situation, the poorest performance by contract security, the murkiness in roles and responsibilities within the public safety structure itself here, drove a wedge between 2/3 of the security structure and law enforcement. And we all watched that play out on the news. So there you have it. There you are. So you come into an organization, and I think all of us will agree that all of the leadership team that has come in here, including the captain, all have very progressive, outside of the box views on how we need to do things. What's been going on hasn't worked. We have to change it. We have to change it, though, where it fits our market in our St. Louis model, okay? And that's what we're doing. So along with that, you have to change your internal culture, your internal perspective. And that's difficult to do because if you think about it, they're operating under one business model that they think is working. And then you got 2 or 3 folks that come in here from the outside, along with some assessors, and go, wait a second, what you guys are doing is not working, okay? It's counter to best practices. It's counter to what we have to do in this region to complement our multi-jurisdictional operation. So yes, the most challenging thing, to answer your question, was reorganizing, recultivating, a staff that was here during that time and bringing them along to operate under a new business model that perhaps they may not understand or may not agree with, at least initially. But I think over time, they have seen the successes that we've had, and we've had successes, and we've had things that haven't worked. But they understand that things can't stay the same. And so that has been a huge challenge. We continue to work on that every day. And not only do we combat that within the public safety structure with Metro Transit, but I have to take this message myself and Steve Berry and Vernon Summers and the entire team. We have to engage our company by statewide, not even within the enterprise of Metro Transit, but by statewide, so that there's an understanding of why these changes had to be made and what we're trying to build that will provide sound structure, safety and security structure as we move forward. It's not anyone's fault. It's what, when you operate under one business model, that becomes the norm, and you cannot really grasp. We've done a 180 turn as far as our deployments and our security strategies and our philosophies. And so it takes time to recultivate your operation, which is usually important. It's much easier to recultivate our outside stakeholders and our customers because they all saw very poor performance from a safety and security structure that wasn't working, and everybody called for change. But on the inside of the operation, that's really where the challenge has come in. We have great people. We have strong sound capability. There's two things that we have to do going forward from a company's perspective. We have to be very proud of who we are, and we have to be very proud of the product that we provide. And we have to drive our own narrative, and we have to tell this story, because as we're doing all of this systematic revamping and operational revamping, ladies and gentlemen, we have to sell this system back to the region.
Thank you, Kevin. Kim, I just want to ask you, as someone on the outside of the transit agency looking in, can you talk a little bit about the importance of having a measurement tool like the Metro Security Scorecard?
Yes, for sure. So when we were going through the plan of action after the MOU was completed in 2018, part of what was going on is that we needed a third-party assessment of what was happening, and an organization that wasn't involved in the back and forth at that time and the pointing of fingers and the lack of accountability. And East West Gateway filled a gap in those conversations and really is a credible third party that was able to conduct these security report cards, and East West Gateway is respected in the region. You represent all of the elected officials, and it was the perfect organization to conduct these third-party assessments of what was happening, to get a true idea of what the system looked like and what the security program in place looked like. So it was really important for the stakeholders to have East West Gateway step into that space, and I think it has been highly effective since the very beginning. You heard Kevin talk about all of the items that have been implemented on that 99 item list, and there are so many more out there. It was broken down into categories, and again, all of those don't fall on Kevin's plate. Some of those are regional issues, some of those are funding issues. How do we make some of those capital improvements? But by having that third party, it made it a much more credible assessment of what was actually going on in the region with regard to transit safety and security.
All right, thank you. Missy, I do have a question for you. We talked a little bit leading up to this event, and our audience today is comprised of elected leaders and decision makers from around the region. What can they do to help you and Kevin and the rest of your team more effectively do your jobs?
Well, let me get the light back on. I apologize. Let's see if we can get the light back on. yeah, it's not going to work. So we'll just, oh, there we go. Someone's taking care of me. I apologize, technical difficulties. So some of the things that we could, that we need help with are obviously those borders, those imaginary border lines. And when you talk about borders, people don't understand. I mean, lawmakers do. But, you know, not everybody understands that each jurisdiction has their own set of rules. They have their own set of ordinances. They have their own lawmakers. They have their own prosecuting attorneys. They have their own district attorneys. It would be phenomenal, and it would make our lives very much easier to go in line with that same thought process that we are a regional system. If we could get those lawmakers to help us to remove some of those hindrances that we have on the law enforcement end with regard to those legislative situations, and assisting in maybe looking at different ways to deal with situations that I know that other transit systems don't necessarily have what we have to deal with. Because we are a little different. We have so many different municipalities just within St. Louis County along our line. And then you have St. Louis City, and then you have St. Clair County Sheriff's Department. But it would be amazing if there would be a possibility that we could look at that in a more holistic way, in a more regional way, when we come to issues with regard to just our line. So stripping away those lines, those imaginary lines, would be phenomenal. That would be something that I would love to see if anybody would have any ideas on how we could work towards that.
And I have one final question for Kevin. It's not so much a question, Kevin. I just want to give you an opportunity. You know, part of what we were trying to do today was, and it's a little bit difficult because we're in this online format, but trying to take some of the presentations and the slides and the pieces of paper that people have seen over the last 2.5 years and give them legs and kind of show them what's actually being done out on the system. So can you talk a little bit about your ride along program that you've been doing and how people can get out there and see for themselves what changes are happening and how things are being done?
Absolutely. So the ride along program, it's really a tour of public safety. It's kind of a makeshift ride along. We take you out to one of the platforms and show you how our deployments are set, how our security staff rotates. We also talk about the technology that's in place. But the most important thing about your time here with us is we start out in about an hour and a half setting, and it's a roundtable discussion. And we walk you through and give you a very clear perspective of the different changes that have taken place, how that impacts the broader 6 categories that WSP has found to be deficient, and what we're doing to better that. And listen, what I found as a police chief, I used to do this as a police chief when I first started the process, and my colleagues would ask me, my other chief colleagues would ask me, well, why would you do something like that? So we can do a Zoom meeting, an annual conference, you know, or I can come to a facility and engage 15, 20, 30 people. But the true interaction and the information sharing and the relationship building is built one-on-one. And that's how we have to build confidence back in this system. You know, there are countless examples of effective leaders across this country and organizations that have a customer-based philosophy, because that's how they certainly succeed as an operation. But they take a personal interest in their customer base. And if there's something that needs to be corrected, if there is a complaint or an issue that their customers have with their process, with their service, with their product, they go and they attack that one-on-one, and they deal with that as from a leadership perspective. And that's what we're going to do here. And this ride-along process is about a 2.5 hour, 3 hour process. So it's a little bit of a commitment, but we will walk you through why we're doing what we're doing, why it improves public safety and safety and security on the system greatly. We also, if we have the opportunity, take the participants over and show them how our public safety dispatching center works and how it operates between not only the public safety component here at Metro, but our bus operations dispatching and our MetroLink control center, how everything interacts. And then we take you out on the system, and actually our G4S account manager, Billy Reynolds, and our transit security specialist, one of our field leadership positions here, they're the ones that take you out on the system and show you the deployments, the rotations, the technologies, and it really gives you an opportunity to ask questions. We have to have ownership in what we're doing, and for this to be successful, we have to have the region's ownership in the system. We've had multiple council representation from St. Louis County come through. Just yesterday, Captain Webb and I were on a Zoom call with the St. Louis Police Commission or St. Louis County Police Board of Police Commissioners at the invitation of the police chief, Mary Barton. Two of those commissioners had been on our tour, and at the end of the tour had suggested that we address the entire commission. We have had stakeholders from the region. We have had bi-state development board leadership. Our chairperson, Rose Miller, who is outstanding and a very progressive individual, has been through this tour. We have had members of the media come through. And I'm not asking you to not criticize or not critique, but I will tell you that we will take full ownership in what we're doing. If we have to make changes to the long-term strategy that we've put in place or the operational process that we put in place, we will do it with openness and transparency, and we will do it with regional collaboration, and we will make it right. I always said this, and Captain Webb will tell you the same thing as a police commander. We will never, ever be able to promise you that nothing will happen on the MetroLink. I could never promise the mayor and the board of aldermen in Baldwin that we wouldn't have crime there, okay? And I can't do that here. But what I can promise you is that we are correcting the things that need to be corrected. We are operating collaboratively, we are operating transparency, and we are professionalizing the operation and allowing public safety experts to run public safety. And that's the message that I want to put out today. And that is the same message that you will hear when you come through. I will make time on my schedule for anyone who is interested in our life's work here and what we're trying to do. So if you're interested in coming in and meeting with us, please reach out to me. I look forward to seeing you and engaging you, and I will answer your difficult questions, and I will explain exactly why we're doing what we're doing in concert with the WSP recommendations that we all agreed to.
Thank you, Kevin. I would just echo some of what you just said and close us out here by just pointing out that, you know, it's not about having a perfect security strategy. I don't think any of us ever thought that that's what we were shooting for, because I don't think that exists. It's more about having a comprehensive strategy that is built on strong relationships, that has the tools and processes built in so that when you need to make a course correction, you have the ability to do that and do that quickly. And I think from everything we're seeing, you are building that system. And, you know, I hope that those who've joined us can really tell that a lot of progress has been made. And if anyone is interested in learning more, Kevin can certainly hook you up with one of his ride-alongs and let you peek under the hood and see what's happening.
I would like to add one thing to that regarding the ride-along. This ride-along program, this tour program that we put in place, I didn't build this. Our team built it. I don't lead it. Our team leads it. So there's representation from every component of public safety and law enforcement on this tour. It's led and it's owned by our team, and that's what's important.
All right. Thank you to our panelists, and thank you to our attendees. And that's all we have for today.